In this video, we see Mariana Fonseca, a nurse who decided to share her story about a crime that shook the residents of Portugal. Watching her speak in front of the camera, she seems to be a sweet and harmless young woman. However, as we will see through the eyes of an expert in human behavior, her gestures reveal disturbing aspects of her personality. Mariana is one of the main characters in the story we bring you today, with twists and turns that seem straight out of a novelist's imagination. Join us to learn the details of this shocking story, the case of Diogo Goncalves. The beautiful and touristic city of Albufeira is one of the most visited destinations in the Algarve region in southern Portugal. It was here in 1999 that Diogo Goncalves was born, the only son of a humble but hard-working family whose income depended mostly on the ups and downs of tourism. Diogo's parents considered him a good son. Those who met him thought he was respectful, responsible, hard-working, reliable, and at the same time a very sociable young man who liked to surround himself with friends and family. Diogo attended high school in his hometown, and after graduating, he began studying computer science. When he was only 16 years old, in 2015, he got a job at McDonald's to pay for his education and help with household expenses. He was still working at this renowned company when his life took an unexpected and tragic turn. One day, his father collapsed before his eyes due to a stroke that, according to media reports, left him in a vegetative state. That same year, while he and his mother struggled to cope with his father's delicate health situation, the young man faced a new setback. His mother, a woman who always supported him so he could study and progress, was the victim of a car accident while on her way to her cleaning job at a shopping mall. The woman was dragged several meters by a vehicle and fell into a ditch, where she died from the serious injuries she sustained. Although the driver fled the scene, the police managed to identify him, and the man was brought to trial. While Diogo was waiting for the man responsible for his mother's death to be sentenced, his father had to be transferred to a health center where he could receive the care that his condition required. Moved by the boy's situation, a maternal aunt invited him to move in with her, but they had significant differences, and after a few weeks, cohabitation became unsustainable. Then the young man talked about it with a friend, and his parents rented him a room in their house in the Algoz area, also in the Algarve. At that time, the closeness with his friend's family made the afflicted student feel like part of their family. Despite his young age, Diogo demonstrated great resilience thanks to his patience and optimism. In 2017, at the age of 18, Diogo finished his studies in computer science and secured a 6-month internship at the prestigious 5-star tourist resort and spa, Vila Vita Park. His performance pleasantly impressed his managers, who offered him a position as an IT technician in 2018. The professional accepted the offer and resigned from his job at the fast food chain where he had worked for almost 3 years and had risen to the position of manager on duty. Diogo entered this new stage of his life with hope, envisioning a future of opportunities that would help him get ahead after the hard trials he had faced. After some time with the company and hopeful for better times, he decided to buy a car. The young man got along very well with his co-workers, including a girl who particularly caught his attention. She was Maria Malveiro, 19, who worked as a security guard at the hotel. Maria also came from a humble background and, like Diogo, had to deal with challenging situations. Her mother had a mental illness, and her father abandoned the family when she was very young, so she never had contact with him again. The security employee was a lover of martial arts and studied karate. She dreamed of becoming a police officer, but when she applied to the academy, she was rejected because of a tattoo on her body. That disappointment led her to study at Segurinfo, a company dedicated to training guards in various private security fields. Diogo liked Maria. From the moment they met, he made sure she knew it, but she didn't reciprocate and treated him coldly. Fabio Acosta, Diogo's good friend, said that Diogo was in love with Maria and that he was obsessed with her to the point of rejecting a good job offer from the Sheraton hotel chain in Lisbon because he didn't want to leave her side. Diogo would invite Maria to go to restaurants and for walks. Additionally, when she was on duty, he would bring her dinner or lunch. Eventually, the two became inseparable, and those who watched them thought they were a couple. However, there was no romantic relationship between them. Maria told Diogo that she didn't want a relationship with him because she had just ended a toxic relationship with a naval officer, but at the same time, she gave him false hopes. The computer technician didn't give up hope for a future with her and kept looking for ways to stay close and please her in every way he could. One day, he suffered great disappointment when he stumbled upon a social media video of Maria kissing another woman on the mouth. Diogo was upset, as he thought she should have told him that she liked girls, and that was the reason they would never be together. Fabio, Diogo's best friend, tried to calm him down by assuring him that girls often kiss each other on the mouth, but Diogo was not convinced. He insisted that Maria had lied to him, and that was the reason for her rejection. Despite the disillusionment, Diogo and Maria remained friends, and she continued to accept his gifts and invitations to go out. On several occasions, Diogo tried to accompany her home, but she always told him that her roommate had a jealous boyfriend who wouldn't accept another man in the apartment. Time went by, and in December 2019, Diogo was informed that he would finally receive compensation for his mother's death, which occurred 3 years earlier. Once the payment of €70,000 was made, the young man decided it was time to buy a house to avoid paying rent. Diogo shared the good news with his friend Maria, who, a few weeks later, resigned from the hotel, claiming that she could no longer stand the comments of her co-workers about an alleged relationship between her and the computer technician. She also justified her resignation by saying that she wanted to spend more time with her mother, who needed more attention due to her mental illness. At this moment, there was no reason to doubt her words, but subsequent events would suggest that her decision to resign from the hotel had darker motivations. This is where the third main character of this story comes into the picture. Mariana Fonseca, 23, the young woman we saw in a video at the beginning of our story. She was a nurse at the Lagos hospital and had a stable romantic relationship with Maria. By the first quarter of 2020, they were living together in the house of the health workers' parents, as they didn't yet have the financial stability to afford their own home where they could openly express their relationship. That was Maria's situation when she found out about the large amount of money Diogo would receive. Curiously, from that moment on, Maria began to get closer to her suitor. Everything indicated that Maria shared the information with her lover, and they decided together to deceive the young man into accessing his bank account data and stealing the compensation money. The truth is, one day, after repeatedly turning down Diogo's advances, Maria surprised the love-struck young man by suggesting they have a romantic evening together. This was music to his ears. He could not believe his luck. After waiting so long, the very idea of being with his beloved filled him with excitement. The meeting was set for the night of Friday, March 20th, 2020. Diogo was excited, unable to feel any doubt about what led the girl to such a sudden change of heart. That day, Felisberta Canario, his landlord and mother of his friend Fabio, was returning to Lisbon after 6 years of work in the Algarve. The family had decided to relocate and sell the house. Although Maria and Mariana gave different versions of what happened that day, here are the facts as reported by the media based on official information. As soon as she arrived at the place, Maria offered Diogo an orange juice that she had brought, but the drink had a surprise ingredient: 3 ampules of diazepam, a drug that affects the central nervous system with anxiolytic and sedative effects. According to reports, Mariana was the one who proposed the use of this substance, which she stole from the hospital where she worked. The partners' plan was for Diogo to fall asleep, so they could access his bank information and manipulate his fingers to bypass the phone's tactile security controls. Mariana reportedly waited in her vehicle outside the house while her girlfriend executed the plan. She even texted Maria several times to find out if the sedative had taken effect, as it was taking longer than anticipated. Inside the house, things were starting to get tense. Diogo didn't understand what was going on and began to get nervous. Maria then tried to calm him down by promising him a sexy dance, but first she had to tie him to a chair. After being tied up for a few minutes, Diogo panicked and asked Maria to let him go, but she became violent and they began to struggle. Taking advantage of her experience in martial arts, she controlled Diogo, threw him to the ground, and wrapped her arms around his neck, preventing him from breathing. According to Mariana's reports, Maria asked her to come in, and when she did, she found Diogo on the floor. She asked Maria what she had done and scolded her for deviating from the plan, which was to steal his passwords and take his money. Seeing that Diogo was unresponsive, the nurse performed a resuscitation maneuver that restored his breathing. However, when he woke up, he was highly agitated and attempted to attack Mariana. Perhaps when he saw the other woman, he realized there was a conspiracy against him and tried to defend himself. Faced with Diogo's hostile reaction toward her girlfriend, Maria subdued him by grabbing him from behind, throwing him to the floor, and once again restricting his breathing with a maneuver on his neck. Diogo's life ended at the hands of the woman he loved. His body lay in the living room of the house. They immediately began their planned robbery. First, they cut off his thumb and forefinger to unlock his phone, access the mobile payment app, and transfer the money. This process took several days due to daily transaction limits for such operations. At the time of the crime, telecommuting had just begun due to COVID-19 pandemic restrictions. Since Diogo was scheduled to work the next day, the perpetrators tried to prevent his colleagues from noticing his absence and reporting him missing. One of his IT colleagues received a text message from Diogo's number stating he wouldn't be able to work his Saturday shift and needed a replacement. However, this message seemed unusual to his colleague, as Diogo wasn't known for suddenly changing shifts. Concerned, the colleague asked if Diogo was okay and received a positive response. Similar strange texts were exchanged with others close to Diogo throughout Friday and part of Saturday, sounding less and less like his usual communication style. Diogo's boss also received texts, including one claiming he had met a woman from France and was moving there suddenly. This raised suspicions because Diogo was known for his responsibility and wouldn't abruptly leave his job. Seeking answers, the boss tried calling Diogo, but received a text saying he couldn't talk on the phone. Insisting on hearing his voice, the boss replied that he would be calm until they talked, and Diogo explained what was happening. The skepticism of Diogo's friends and family towards the texts supposedly from him led Maria and Mariana to change their approach. They then made up a story that Diogo had contemplated suicide and planned to dismember his remains to dispose of them. Maria later claimed that they were inspired by the TV show Dexter, where a forensic doctor eliminates criminals who escape the judicial system and erases traces of his crimes by dismembering his victims. After completing their macabre task, they placed Diogo's body in garbage bags in the trunk of their car. They then went to an ATM and shopped at a mall, where security cameras caught them hugging and laughing. Returning to their residence, they proceeded to dismember Diogo's body. Eventually, they placed his torso in a black bag and the remaining pieces in a container. During this time, Diogo's friends initiated a campaign to report him missing and alerted authorities, who awaited the mandatory 48-hour period to officially declare him missing. The women then left the house. Maria drove Diogo's vehicle to a cliff near the Cabo San Vicente lighthouse in Sagres, closely followed by Mariana in her car. Around 2 p.m. that day, Maria threw Diogo's torso off the cliff and abandoned his car nearby, hoping it would look like Diogo had taken his own life. However, the torso got stuck on the cliff instead of falling into the sea. Together they drove about 7 kilometers for approximately 12 minutes to the Pago do Inferno waterfall in Tavira, where they disposed of the rest of Diogo's remains in the water. Soon after, Diogo's car was discovered in a nearby parking lot by the Cabo San Vicente lighthouse. According to a Correio da Manhã news report, 2 computers were found inside the car. The judicial police were called, and thorough land and sea searches led to the discovery of Diogo's torso, partially covered in a black garbage bag. Simultaneously, another disturbing discovery was made along the coast at Pago do Inferno, where a French couple stumbled upon the man's head. Following an intensive search by police officers, Diogo's arms and legs were eventually located. Investigators found the circumstances surrounding Diogo's death unusual, particularly as they learned more about his quiet demeanor and lack of association with people of questionable character. Continuing their investigation, the detectives soon discovered that Diogo had received a large compensation for his mother's death. Following the money trail, they found that a significant sum had been transferred from Diogo's account to Maria's. Logically, the next step for the investigators was to look for Maria to explain why Diogo's money was in her account. To justify her actions, Maria claimed to the police that she killed Diogo because he attempted to sexually assault her. She even claimed that this was the reason she had resigned from the hotel before the incident. However, when investigators reviewed the text messages between the victim and the perpetrator, they revealed a different story. The text messages showed that their relationship had grown closer after Maria left her job, contradicting her allegations. From her initial interactions with investigators, Maria asserted sole responsibility for planning and carrying out the actions that led to Diogo's death. She emphasized that her partner, Mariana, was not involved in the crime, but Mariana's account contradicted Maria's claims. The nurse explained that Maria told her that she wanted to steal money from someone, but that she had no intention of ending his life. She explained that she had only intended to make him suffer by forcing him to give her the password to his bank account. The evidence compiled by detectives was sufficient to implicate both women in the crime. Investigators had phone records, a cell phone, and recordings from the security cameras of an ATM. Maria and Mariana were arrested on April 1, 2020, and in June of the same year, they appeared before an examining magistrate. The judge carefully followed the chronology of events narrated by Maria, who insisted on accepting her guilt and denying any link to Mariana. According to her version, Diogo's body remained for 2 days in the car's trunk, parked in the house's garage. It was there that they dismembered his remains, taking advantage of the hours when Mariana's family was sleeping. The magistrate, while listening to Maria's detailed account, repeatedly asked where Mariana was at that moment. As the body was divided with surgical precision at the joints, all eyes in the courtroom fell on Mariana. Mariana anticipated any questions by explaining that because everyone knew she was a nurse, they assumed she was responsible for the dissection. She clarified that consulting the internet provided enough information on the subject. Regarding Maria's statements, she described how the light in the garage was constantly turning off, disrupting her work, and Mariana had to stand next to the sensor to keep it on. Furthermore, It was reported that after disposing of the remains, Maria started texting a colleague at the hotel, who told her that Diogo's vehicle had been found, and she felt fear for her partner's life. The defendant replied that she also expected the worst, but that there was nothing to be done. The young women texted each other again when it became known that Diogo's torso had been found. On that occasion, the hotel worker asked Maria who could commit such a crime, to which she replied that, in her opinion, the suspect was the victim's aunt. The examining magistrate ordered the preventive detention of both, commenting that this was a serious crime within the legal system, committed in a cold, calculating, reflective, and macabre manner. In his ruling, the magistrate stated that the coldness of the defendant's statements could frighten and shock anyone. Maria and Mariana listened to the judge decree the measures. They held hands and didn't seem afraid. They would both go to the Tyres prison in Cascais, and the only thing they could think of was to request to be in the same cell. Several months later, on February 24, 2021, the trial against the defendants began. During her testimony in court on February 26, 2021, Maria reaffirmed that the initial idea was to take revenge for the alleged attempt to sexually abuse Diogo, but that it was not her intention to end his life. The accused confessed that she intended to humiliate the victim and confirmed that her co-defendant had no relationship with the young man and was unaware of the alleged attempted rape. Maria also assured that her actions were not related to the €70,000 compensation that Diogo received for the death of his mother. The young women appeared together in court, but did not look at each other during the entire process. It was rumored that the two decided to end the relationship after the arrest and subsequent imprisonment. On March 9, 2021, Maria changed her initial statements. She said that she followed her ex-girlfriend's orders and specifically pointed her out as the author of the idea of administering diazepam and withdrawing money from the victim's card. Maria, who confessed that she tried to protect Mariana at first because she loved her very much, was now accusing her of having planned the crime with the intent to steal Diogo's fortune, motivated by Mariana's jealousy. The defendant spoke in court without Mariana present and said that when she told her lover about the compensation Diogo had received, she began to plan the robbery. She claimed that the nurse began to put negative ideas about Diogo into her head and she got carried away. Maria claimed that when she saw that Diogo didn't fall asleep despite the diazepam, Mariana ordered her to put pressure on his neck to make him faint. But instead of losing consciousness, the young man stopped breathing. Continuing with her story, the former security guard said that upon realizing what had happened, she asked Mariana to revive him using her knowledge, and the nurse did so. Maria then told the court that she had left the room at that moment, and when she returned, Mariana hugged her and told her that Diogo no longer had a pulse, and that no one would come between them. With that twist in her version, Maria had exposed Mariana as responsible for most of the crimes, blaming her for the robbery and for ending Diogo's life. She also accused Mariana of disposing of the body. The hearing also heard testimony from some witnesses, one of whom was forensic expert Teresa Costa. The expert explained that the diazepam amounts found in Diogo's blood were much smaller than expected from 3 orally ingested vials, which could indicate that Diogo didn't take the dosage that had been indicated or had done so many hours before he died. On April 27, 2021, the court released its decision. Maria was found guilty of the crimes of aggravated homicide, co-perpetration of bodily desecration, robbery, illegal access, fraud, vehicle theft, and possession of an illegal weapon. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison and ordered to pay compensation of €265,396 to Diogo's father. Mariana was acquitted of the murder charge, but was found guilty of desecration of a corpse and co-perpetration of fraud, resulting in a 4-year prison sentence. However, she was released because none of the offences she was convicted of justified preventive detention, at least until there was a final sentence. Mariana was also ordered to pay 350 euros. The court concluded that Mariana's attempt to revive Diogo demonstrated that she had no intention of ending his life. Judging by their decision, the magistrates considered the confession initially made by Maria, according to which she was the only one responsible for the judged facts. The ruling was rejected by the Portuguese residents, who considered that Mariana was as guilty as Maria of the horrendous crime against Diogo. After the ruling, Mariana left the court through the back where her father, who was present at all the hearings, was waiting for her. Neither of them made any statements to journalists. However, their lawyer said it was possible that they would appeal the decision. After the sentences, Mariana gave interviews to the media and went to work at the Lagos hospital, but the health center administration prevented her from returning to work. In interviews with local television channels, Mariana seemed happy and said that she could finally sleep peacefully. She also apologized to Diogo's family. Upon seeing the young woman's statements, a human behavior expert named Alexandra Monteiro shared a video on a well-known social media account with a brief explanation of Mariana's body language. At the bottom of the video, he detailed that he observed emotions and moods that were incongruent with the context, as well as gestures and movements associated with manipulation. Alexandra added that manipulators have enormous difficulty hiding pleasure and superiority, even if they try to disguise it. These statements make a lot of sense when we see what was yet to occur, in this case full of unexpected twists and turns. Mariana did not stand idly by when the health center where she used to work prevented her from returning to her activities. The hospital had initiated disciplinary proceedings against her for unexcused absences during her time in prison, and she was fired. She then demanded compensation. In her claim before the Labour Court, Mariana asked for 50,000 euros in compensation for unjustified dismissal. In April 2022, after a decision in her favour and 2 appeals filed by her employer, an appeals court confirmed that the hospital centre should pay her 30,000 euros for wrongfully dismissing her. A few months before the ruling on Mariana's Labour case became known, Maria's name resounded in the media again. On December 29, 2021, the young woman who had been sentenced to 25 years in prison was found dead in her cell inside the Tyres Penitentiary Centre. According to the prison's emergency service call, at 12:23 p.m., guards were alarmed when Maria did not leave her cell block for lunch. They checked on her well-being and discovered her hanging from a sheet attached to the outside bars of her cell. When the firefighters arrived, Maria was unsuccessfully subjected to resuscitation maneuvers, and an emergency doctor from Cascais Hospital, who also responded to the call, declared her dead on the spot. João de Souza, Maria's defense lawyer, had requested a prison change because the inmate wanted to be closer to her family, but his request was denied. The defense attorney explained, with the report in hand, that his client had undergone a psychological study because she presented problems inside the prison. According to the examiner's conclusions, Maria had symptoms of anxiety, depression, sadness, apathy, lack of appetite, lack of sleep, and ideas of ending her life. Returning to Mariana's situation after the trial, as announced, her attorney appealed the ruling in an attempt to reduce his client's sentence. The trial court's decision also provoked the appeal of Diogo's father and the public prosecutor's office, who considered that the nurse was responsible for the young man's death and should receive a harsher punishment. The reviews consulted did not mention the health condition of the victim's father after the stroke he suffered years earlier. However, they did note that the man had appointed himself as an assistant, a role in Portuguese criminal law that allows him to directly participate in the case's proceedings. In July 2023, the Évora Court of Appeal announced its verdict. Mariana was sentenced to 25 years in prison, the maximum penalty allowed under Portuguese law. She was convicted as a co-perpetrator in the aggravated homicide of Diogo, in addition to the crimes for which she had already been sentenced. In a 247-page ruling, the appellate court considered that the Portimão court had failed in the global analysis of the facts, since, in reality, Mariana was present in all the material acts committed against Diogo by Maria, and in some, she even participated directly. The document states that Mariana cleaned the victim's house together with her accomplice, helped transport the body, participated in the dissection of the body, and benefited from a money transfer. According to media reports, the ruling states that Mariana participated in the crime without at any time expressing any opposition. In addition, the magistrates affirmed that the conduct of the defendants had been morbid and grotesque, and the details had an atrocity dimension that fortunately was uncommon in Portuguese reality. João Grande dos Santos, Mariana's lawyer, announced that he would appeal to the Supreme Court of Justice. If the Supreme Court endorses the decision of the appeals court, the nurse will have to serve the established sentence and will be forced to pay compensation of €220,000. Regarding his client's reaction upon learning of the sentence, João stated that Mariana reacted very badly and that the ruling came as a great surprise to her. The crime against Diogo Gonçalves captured the attention of the Portuguese people, even though it occurred shortly after the President of Portugal declared a state of emergency due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Particularly shocking to the public was the realization that the women involved were two young, genteel-looking female workers with no prior criminal records. It is terrifying to consider that seemingly trustworthy individuals could commit heinous crimes out of jealousy, profit, or revenge, as illustrated in this case. The circumstances surrounding the IT professional's death and his life story deeply impacted the beautiful tourist town where the event took place and the entire country. However, to this day, only Mariana, the only survivor of the 3 people who were present at Diogo's house on that fateful Friday, knows the exact sequence of events involving her and Maria. It remains uncertain whether she will ever disclose the full truth. And well, dear listener, that concludes today's case. I look forward to seeing you in another chapter so that together we can analyze all the details of the most terrible crimes in history. See you in the next crime file. Goodbye.